Now, we like to pick on the boomers. It's a big internet meme. Yeah, shut up, boomer. But the reality is, I think a lot of them were financially not as savvy as they thought they were. There was a percentage of them that were financially capable and did know what they were doing, but it wasn't anywhere near as high as anybody would think. And I think what's happening now is all of them are being bled the fuck off.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big ones is taxing wealth transfers. That happens primarily through real estate taxes and to a lesser extent inheritance taxes. Plato, one of my favorite authors, everybody's like, oh my God, why do you read that shit? Because he can teach you things. Just read it. Okay. The first discussion in the Republic, when Plato goes to Cephalus's house, and Cephalus is an old man. Plato's around our age at the time, where it's actually Socrates is the character who is speaking with Cephalus, who is the older man, and they get into a discussion about inheritances. And at that time, 2,200 years ago, you left inheritances to your son, and Cephalus says, my grandfather left my father a good inheritance, but my father left me not as much. I am striving to leave my son just a little more. Okay. And those inheritances was how everybody kept everything going. That held true until the early 20th century. People had inheritances. It wasn't just a rich thing. Okay, maybe it was like 3 horses and a barn, but those were assets that you could use to build from.
Correct. You stacked on. You get something from your family.
Yep.
You stack on it. You leave it to your son, and it just goes on and on.
Yep. Or you pivot. Okay, I've got these 3 horses. I'm going to trade 2 of these horses for a bunch of chickens, and I'm going to start eggs. Just for example, just spitballing an answer out there.
Okay.
But these days, do you know anybody who's ever inherited anything except like maybe a photo album?
Not really.
I have our dining room table, which has been in the family since the late 1800s. That square table that sits in my dining room, that's been in our family since 1889.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's an oak dining table. It's a square oak dining table. And it's just somehow found its way with the family all of these years. And I'm hoping eventually one day my daughter will take it, or I'll have to pass it off to a nephew or somewhere down the line. But yeah, I mean, that's it. That's my family inheritance, is that table. And it didn't used to be that way. Now these inheritances got bled off and we get taxed. And when you die, 40% of your wealth will be taxed. This started in the United States with the Stamp Act of 1797. It was introduced as the first federal tax on estates in the U.S. to fund a naval buildup amid tensions with France. It requires a federal stamp tax for wills to pass through probate, with fees ranging from 25 cents for estates between $50 and $100, 50 cents for the next one, and $1 for each additional 500. Of course, at that time, $1 was an ounce of gold. So we're going 25 cents. That's no big deal. Well, that's a larger amount when you peg it to the gold ounce. In 1826, Pennsylvania became the first state to adopt an inheritance tax, marking the beginnings of state-level inheritance taxation that preceded federal efforts and set a precedent for other states. There was a case in the late 1700s, I forget the name of it, where a man inherited his father's carriage collection. Now, at that time, it would have been like Jay Leno's cars.
Yeah.
And the state came and decided to apply an inheritance tax to him. And he said, but they're carriages. And they said, well, you have so many that it's obvious that you must be doing commerce, which was going to be their excuse for taxing him.
Uh-huh.
He said, no, my dad just collected carriages. It's a thing. The year is 1790, whatever the fuck it was. And that actually went to the Supreme Court, where the state actually won out and was able to tax this guy's carriages that he inherited from his father, which started some of this whole mess. The 1797 Stamp Act that they're talking about is part of that case. I just can't remember the name of it right now. But in 1864, the Revenue Act was amended to increase inheritance taxes and add a succession tax on real estate transfers to further fund the Civil War. Now, the U.S. traditionally has always used fucking property taxes and income taxes and inheritance taxes as an excuse to raise money for wars. And then they don't turn it off. The income tax in Civil War was turned off in 1867, but they brought it back in 1868. Supreme Court struck it down, said, no, you can't do an income tax. Until 1913, when Howard Taft wrote a letter to Congress demanding that they pass the 16th Amendment to get income tax, which is where we are today. And these taxes have been used over and over and over again to bleed off inheritances so that the state accumulates all of that wealth.
Yeah, and listen, there are methods you can do to get around this, but you need to talk to an asset preservation attorney to run you through all the steps. I used to be up to speed on that about 15 years back, not anymore. So a lot of shit has changed. And
Hang on, dropped a pen.
If you have, like, I have 2 properties. More than likely at some point they will get moved over into a trust. So when I do shuffle off this motor coil, you know, people can benefit from those that I choose to, you know, have access to the trust. So hopefully I can get around all this bullshit after I die.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.